सर 1-2 मिनट वेट कर लेते हैं, फिर स्टार्ट करते हैं।
ठीक है सर।
Okay, now we are starting. Good afternoon, all of you. Myself, Dr. Mehul Rabari. I welcome you all in our virtual fieldwork session. Now I am going to introduce our today's speaker. Today we have an impressive personality, Dr. Arnav Anjaria from our ILSAS family. Sir has done MA Political Science from Central University of Hyderabad, MPhil in Regional Study on Cyberspace, PhD in Human Rights. All this qualification done from Central University of Hyderabad. Sir is active in social work activities like he has participated in the earthquake in Nepal, activist in Tibetan freedom movements, active Karyakarta in ABVP. Sir has more than 5 years experience in teaching and research. If you talk about past experience, he had worked with MIT University, Delhi, Irma Anand, and sir has attended many seminars and workshops and published paper. So I welcome you, sir, in our virtual fieldwork session. Please start the session, sir.
Okay, am I audible, Dr. Rabari?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mehul Rabari, for that brief introduction. I am very honored and I consider myself very fortunate to be addressing these exciting young students and Sir, if you could mute your mic. Yes, thank you, sir. Right. So I'm very happy to be addressing these exciting young students, and I believe some are also working professionals in the corporates and allied industry. I also thank Mr. Rajkamal Ajmeri, Ms. Devanshi Pandya, Dr. Jyoti Patel, and Ms. Shivali Tangri for organizing this, and the principal, Dr. Sunny Thomas. Now, to be very honest, in politics and international relations, we tend to approach corporates and we tend to approach social work rather from a perspective that is considered a bit different. We are possibly at times in disagreement with a lot of things that happen on the name of human resource management. But this lecture would possibly be a part of my own impressions of human rights, human resource management, and the challenges before the society for all of us as a collective, and what possible role you as trained HR professionals, as social workers who are trained in human resource could play for bringing about and creating a more amicable scenario, especially in the post-COVID era. Now, I was reminded firstly of this important incident in world history. The collapse of the Berlin Wall in 1991 led to what Francis Fukuyama, the American political scientist, called it as the end of ideology, end of history. Socialism, Samajwad, collapsed, and we see the emergence of an unrestrained wave of capitalism, which in Gujarati we call it as Punjiwad, right? So unrestrained capitalism that lamented into a wave of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. We all talk of globalization. We all sing praise of globalization. We all sing ballads of new emergence of a global market. But there is also a need to question whose globalization it was, what globalization was promised to us, and what was the reality of this globalization. If there was a globalization of market, if there was a globalization of opportunities, if there was a globalization of technology, there was also a globalization of fear. What fear? Fear amongst workers who for centuries, for decades had lived under a system that protected them, where employee rights were given priority, where workers' rights were respected, where women's rights were a part of the organizational agenda, where maternity leave was a part of the mechanism, where pension, where social security, where insurance, where better workplace facility, workplace rights were taken for granted. Nobody had to resist for it. Nobody had to struggle for it because it was part of the understanding of an organization that depended and believed that an organization's success is based on the happiness and welfare of its employees. And today, when we see the new nature of the organizations today and the workplaces, we tend to think, is this the human resource management that emerged from the works of Charles Babbage and Robert Owen? I'm sure you are aware of Robert Owen and his great legacy during the Industrial Revolution that paved the way for an amicable employee-employer contract that took care of the employees. And it was Owen who gave a new idea of Owenian socialism. Socialism was a path where you could have industry and you could also have state, and where there was the primacy of the workers and the workers' rights. So the end of history post-1991 created a new organizational structure where priority was given to profit. Profit took greater importance over employee rights, employee dignity, and workers' insurance, workers' social security. In this context, if there remains a fulcrum of hope, a fulcrum of power to negotiate, this is because of the institution of human resource management and social work. Social work somehow continued the legacy, erstwhile legacy of the state itself. Social work has created new agents of social change in the private sphere, not necessarily associated with the state. That is the government. In political science, we refer to the government as the state. So, social work created change makers at the grassroots level who took upon them, students like you, faculties like you, professionals like you, who took upon your shoulders the priority and the agenda for being change makers. And that is the reason why we have seen much lesser conflict than what was anticipated with the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the rise of an unrestrained capitalist society. Now, when we talk of human rights were there before, human rights are there now. But what is also the reality is the gross violation of human rights. But we need to somehow declassify, we need to somewhere deconstruct this whole idea of human rights between economic rights and political rights. So the charter that is the guiding principle, that is the Bible of human rights world over, is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Several constitutions of the world have adopted the principles from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights into their national constitutions, including the Constitution of India. And this is also the time when we are celebrating 810th year of the passing of one of the world's first modern document of human rights, that was the Magna Carta. If we talk of the first ancient document securing human rights of people, it was the Cyrus cylinder from the Persian civilization, written on stone by the great king Cyrus from Persia, that is today's Iran. It is another fact that today Iran is world's major violator of human rights, but they have a legacy that they are betraying. So, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was being authored, there was a problem. There was a problem because one side told that we should give importance to political rights. And then there was another side that said that before political rights, what should be secured are economic rights. So there was a conflict. Generally, people would believe that human rights are universal. Whatever your ideology be, whatever your ideas be, whatever your beliefs be, whatever your religion be, whatever your faith be, you will agree to the idea that everyone deserves human rights. But there was a new problem. We had the Soviet Union, that is Russia, which was a socialist country, that said that unless people get food to eat, what use do they have of rights? And then, on the other hand, you had America, you had USA and the Western powers who said that what is important is the freedom to live. Only then they can find food to eat. So, there was a conflict. And finally, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there was a balance that was struck, that we find the International Covenant for Political Rights, and we also find the International Covenant for Economic Rights. So, when you talk of human rights is not all about jalado, mitado, hamari mange puri karo, right? It's not all about kranti, it's not all about revolution, it's not all about freedom. It is also about wages, it is also about remuneration, it is also about social security. But slowly, as we see the American dominance becoming more and more influential globally, because we see that post-1991, Russia no longer remained the superpower that it was, and American capitalism seeped into almost every corner of the world. So we see a lot of organizations oriented towards the American mode of production, and we see that economic rights somehow take a secondary position and political rights gain a primacy. You see, today world leaders talk about what? They talk about political rights. They talk about democracy. They talk about civil liberties. Do they talk about pensions? Do they talk about social security? No. They call it a socialist idea. Right? So in that sense, we see that it was with the rise of American imperialism, with the rise of American influence in societies globally, political rights as part of human rights took primacy over economic rights. We also see that amendments to the Indian Constitution have also reduced to a great extent the erstwhile benefits that workers used to enjoy. So in that sense, we see that in an era where there is crony capitalism, where there is prevalence of free market, but the government itself is reducing its participation in the market, it is the legacy of social work. It is the legacy of non-governmental organization. It is the legacy of compassionate HR professionals like you that has somehow maintained a balance in society. And I'm sure some of you must have interned, some of you are already working in the HR sector, in the social work sector. What kind of issues emerge, right? There is also the growing participation of women into the workplaces, which is good. But with the growing participation of women, there is also the fact that are our workplaces women friendly? Are our workplaces gender neutral? Are our corporate agendas, corporate language, gender neutral in their approach? Do the transgender people find it as amicable and as equal and workplace as any other person does so? Are our workplaces today as considerate and understanding to the needs of the women workers as compared to the male workers? So there is a new idea that has emerged, which is gender budgeting. Because of the influence of patriarchy in our society, we see that we have, and it is an undeniable fact, a male-dominant economic mode of production. We consider the male as the primary agent of production in the economy, because we don't seem to consider the work that woman does at home. I'm sure in your families, you have mothers, you have sisters, you have your wives who are not working professionals. But throughout the day, right from the morning till the night, they are always at work. At least the working professionals get a holiday, right? But you see your mothers, you see your sisters, you see ladies around you. They're not working professionals because they don't have a wage contract, but they are always at work, at home. And if you take an estimate, an accounting of the amount of work they do, for which they don't charge you, what would that cost be? So when we measure the GDP, when we measure the NPP, we don't take this cost into account. But this is a huge cost, which the services you are getting for free. Now, this is justified on the basis of tradition, this is justified on the basis of orthodoxy, but there is a perception that they don't work, they sit at home. They don't sit at home. They are also workers. They are also employees. They are also engaged in production. They are engaged in the services that they offer to you at every point of time. So there is a change of mindset also in society. We talk of equality between men and women. We talk of feminist agenda, but feminism begins from home. Unless and until we start respecting, our mothers for the work that they do, the change won't happen. So it is not just the male. It is not just the male member of society who, because he works outside and because he works every single day, is the only worker in the house. The female also works. So gender budgeting is another agenda. What organizations also don't seem to consider is the issue of women workers. On one hand, the woman is an employee in your organization, she works for you, but what is not considered is also the work that she does after she goes home. At what cost does she manage both the systems? And how organizations consider these issues. Human rights are not just about what is happening in Tibet. Human rights are not about what is happening in Syria. Human rights is also about what is happening at home. And it is this consciousness that should become a part of our syllabus. It is this consciousness with which HR professionals could be agents of a more compassionate work experience. The need is today for a reversal of class relations. There is a need for reversal of the mode of production that is pro-employee, pro-people, which is unfortunately in the post-COVID era is a far-fetched dream. So in that sense, there is another issue that also I would like to highlight apart from the issues of human rights at home, which is the formalization and informalization of workplaces. You would be surprised, but if we look at the statistics of the total number of laborers in our economy, according to the International Labour Organization, 83% of our workers are in the informal sector, and only 17% of our workers are in the formal sector. Now, what is the formal sector? A formal sector is sector workers are those workers whose work contracts are recognized. They are legitimate and they carry a certain substantial amount of security for their work. So this would mean white collar workers, this would mean workers in the government industries, this would mean workers in the industries registered with the government, blue collar workers registered with the industry. But who are these 83%? They are visible all around us, but we don't see them at times. This 83% of the people are BD workers, are hawkers, are vendors, are scrap yard workers, are your domestic servants who come to work at your home. Isn't that also work? That is also work. But that work is not recognized. That work is not guided by a single wage contract. How do we together employ a domestic help at our home? We just say, tomorrow you come, this is your salary, that's all. Republic Day comes, we are all enjoying a holiday on the Republic Day. But is it a holiday for our domestic help? No. There's never a holiday. You have to come. Are they lesser Indians than us? No. But I think our society lacks this consciousness to believe that the informal workers are also a part of the economy. And it is the lack of formalization of their work which is leading to gross human rights violations in different informal workplaces. Now, in formal workplaces, we have the Vishaka Committee for Sexual Harassment, where a woman employee who's a victim of a behavior that is violating her dignity can always approach the Sexual Harassment Committee. But what about the massive cases of violation of a woman worker's dignity at the informal workplaces? There are no such committees. There is no mechanism for grievance redressal. There is no mechanism for adjudication because they are stateless. They are economic refugees. Their work, their identity, their agenda is never recognized. Attempts have been made to formalize their work. I'm sure you must have heard of the Self-Employed Women's Association started by Leela Bhatt in Ahmedabad, which was one of the world's first informal trade union of women workers in the informal sector. But these have been attempts. They continue to remain in functioning, but a lot more needs to be done. So as social workers, so as HR professionals who I believe are acquainted with HR policies, with rules guiding workers' rights, I believe it is your august duty to be an HR professional 24/7. If doctors could be doctors 24/7 with a stethoscope, why can't HR professionals also be? Ultimately, it is you who are the fulcrum of economic production of the corporate lifestyle today that prevails. And it is your duty somewhere to make people aware of how they could formalize their work, how their work could be recognized, how women employees can approach institutions for justice. And it is certainly a great opportunity for you as well to make a commendable change in society. We have the National Skill India program. Yes, we are skilling them into, into how to use tools, into how to acquire skills for professional work. But the syllabus misses out on acquainting them with what are their rights, what social security benefits they are eligible for, how they can formalize their work and be recognized as distinguished service professionals. It is this consciousness that some of the students of social work could also take it up as an NGO project. They say, teach a man to fish and he will start fishing rather than donating a fish every single day. This is the fish that you could teach them to fish. There's a technique that you could teach them. Because they have the talents, they have the skills, but what they lack is awareness and consciousness and a support mechanism to formalize their rights and their dignity. Because the cherished dream of the founding fathers of our nation has been to establish a scenario of equality, liberty, and justice. There is a tendency when people come and express their workplace-related problems to people, they say, oh, it's okay. Those things happen. It's a workplace. Is a workplace a territory that is not guided by values of liberty, equality, and justice? No. And as HR professionals, you are the guardians of employees' liberty. You are the guardians of employees' dignity and employees' rights. So in that sense, we see that there is another issue that is prevalent in organizations today, which is a glass ceiling. What is a glass ceiling? If you walk into a showroom or into a hotel, you see a transparent glass. You can see what is there across the glass. You can also see, and to some extent, if you are far away, you don't realize that there is a glass. You realize that I can just walk wheresoever I want without any obstruction. The more near you go with the belief that I can walk till the end, you realize that, oh, what I see is being obstructed by a transparent glass, a glass ceiling, and I cannot walk any further. This glass ceiling, the concept of glass ceiling, is interpreted by feminist scholars as the scenario in modern workplaces as far as women are concerned. Feminist scholars such as Judith Butler and Rekha Pandey highlight that women generally seem to rise only to a certain extent in the organizational hierarchy. While they are told that yes, opportunities galore, opportunities are there, you can rise to great heights, but normally it has been observed that they experience a glass ceiling, that they no longer can rise in the organization. And they say this is a gender-based issue. So as a just, judicious HR, I believe the task is to cater to the organization's agenda, but also to maintain a balance between profit and liberty. It is this balance that keeps our society together. We all must have seen during the lockdown, during the coronavirus, thousands of workers walking on the streets, walking back to their native places. And it was a scenario which was despicable. It was a scenario which was deplorable. And the question is that if we are a constitutional democracy, what about these workers? What about their rights? Majority of them were informal workers from places like Assam, places like Bihar, places like Jharkhand, places like Orissa. And we just somehow as society failed ourselves. So human rights have been interpreted as people who take it to the streets, people who debate human rights based on political conflicts. It is a great misnomer. Human rights, consciousness of human rights, protection of human rights is a task that is before every single individual. It is not a specialized field that deserves or that needs only a specialized study. Protection of human rights, standing up for human rights requires, at the end of the day, compassion, empathy, and a sympathetic perspective towards the world. And you are lucky as students of social work, as students of human resources, that you are trained and you have the license to be compassionate. You have the license to be protectors of people's dignity. So this is something that is another issue. Now, another issue that I would like to highlight now is that today they are talking of a new concept. This concept is that of gig economy, G-I-G. Now, what is a gig? Generally, a gig is that it's used more in modern arts, in musical arts and music, that there are these people with guitar, there are these bands, they are employed by a particular cafe, they go, they play, they are paid the money, it's over. They are not employed by the cafe to play the music permanently, right? They go, so that's a gig, that you go listen to them, they are paid the money, over. But the gig economy is a new trend in the market today. I'm sure all of you are ordering food through Zomato and Swiggy, and you travel by Uber or Ola. They are prime examples of the gig economy today. I'm sorry, there's an interruption. Okay, so the gig economy basically is about temporary wage relations, impermanent contracts, and absence of any contract at all. So all these, Swiggy, Zomato, delivery agents that you see, these companies call them as partners. There are no wage contracts. They are not monthly salaried employees. They are just independent professionals whose profession is not guided by any social security. They do not get any employee benefits. They do not get provident fund. They do not get any other insurance or anything of that sort. The amount of business that they do is what they earn. And this economic model, this model of employment could have a catastrophic impact on our society, because these are impermanent wage contracts. Employees have no rights. Employees' entire destiny is insecure. They are even unsure what happens to them the next day. And the gig economy is becoming a norm across the nations. So in that sense, while we talk of perfection, while we talk of development, while we talk of growth, this is a byproduct of this growth. So the question is that what sort of development model are we heading into? Corporates, organizations are agents of growth and development. As students of social work, the question before you is that what is the byproduct of development? You must have seen that the next Soccer World Cup is going to take place in Qatar. And there are a lot of thousands of employees from all over the world, especially India, Pakistan, Nepal, Philippines, and from Africa, working to build the stadiums in Qatar. You will be surprised, but if you look at their living conditions, they live in inhuman living conditions, so very exploitative conditions. And in that sense, one questions, is this the promise of human resource management? Is this the promise of, is this the promise of amicable corporate organization? No. So whose failure is it? Is it the organization's failure, or is it the failure of our entire system? So in that sense, it is important for human resource professionals, for students of social work, to de-exoticize human rights, to de-orientalize human rights, to not think of human rights as something external to them, to not think of workers' rights as something that happens in a certain other space, inside the other economy. It is important to be realistic of the idea of rights. It is important to understand the relevance of rights and the activism for rights, not as a specialized mode of functioning, but it is important to normalize human rights activism, human rights consciousness into our everyday actions. Every day is a day for human rights. Every day is a day for dignity. Every day is a day for liberty. The moment is not when the moment will come, but the moment is always now. So in that sense, my purpose of addressing all of you today is to understand that the idea of capitalism, idea of unrestrained capitalism is a challenge for the society at large. And in that sense, to rise up to this challenge, I believe human resource syllabus and human rights syllabus needs to go hand in hand. Even I see a problem with the human rights syllabus. Human rights and the students of human rights, students of political science, seem to study something that is so very external to them, that gives them a sense that human rights are something that we don't see around us, but they happen somewhere else. And we need to be more realistic. We need to be more understanding that exploitation, the violation of rights is an everyday reality. And unless we accept this reality, and only then we can bring about a certain change in our society. So in that sense, I'll tell you a joke. There was this Berlin Wall, and on one side of the wall there were a few dogs, and these dogs were not very healthy, and these dogs were malnourished. And suddenly, from the other side, a big dog came, very healthy dog, who was from a socialist state. So they saw that he's very healthy. So they asked him, how is the life on the other side of the wall? So the dog told that, every dog in that particular socialist state gets food at 2 p.m. We get dinner at 9 p.m. Then we are fed with extra bones, and life is good. We are taken for a walk, and all our facilities are taken care of. So then there was this small puppy who was not very healthy, came to the dog and told, then why did you come here? So the dog answered, because I wanted to bark, right? So this particular dog was enjoying economic rights on the other side. But when he came to this side, he found other dogs who were not very healthy. But what they had political rights because they could bark. This is the reality. This is the inherent contradiction. Workers working in Qatar, they get salaries, they get money, but do they have equal amount of rights for expression? So the challenges in different corporate organizations are also very similar. Sometimes the pay packages, sometimes the remuneration, sometimes the benefits are in abundance. But do the workers have equal amount of liberty, equal amount of freedom of expression. And it is for this reason, the lack of such liberty, lack of such expression, that we see the rising cases of stress, of psychological problems, because there is great degree of suppression and too much of a stress on efficiency. On the other hand, there are organizations that could do better by offering more economic benefits to the workers. So this task of mediating between the political rights and the economic rights is upon an earnest HR professional like you. And it is for you to think, what sort of an organization are you contributing to? What sort of an organization do you seek to build? And that is one issue that is mostly relevant today. Third aspect of human rights today is the work from home culture. We see in recent times, as I think the data indicates, that there is a manifold rise in domestic violence because everyone is at home. Conflicts are bound to happen. And we see that both people are working from home, and the lockdown and the work from home culture has resulted in greater conflicts at home. Greater conflict at home, victims of violence, victims of domestic violence, ultimately it affects the organizational efficiency. In such a scenario, in the era of work from home, how are HR policies going to reshape themselves to understand the needs of workers who especially are in a vulnerable position, who especially are victims of exploitation at home? Sometimes it also happens that the workplace is a more free space for people so that they can come and experience freedom for a few hours at the workplace. But a lot of companies like Google, Amazon, Infosys, they are shifting to the work from home culture. And in that sense, how do you ensure employees' happiness? How do you ensure safe and secure workplaces? So the policy itself needs to, more importantly now than ever before, take into account the idea of human rights at home. One doesn't doubt the objective and the agenda of the corporates in ensuring rights and liberties of the workers at the workplace. But today the challenge is much more, and that is why I go back to my earlier point, that human rights are not just about the public sphere, human rights are also about the private sphere. And there is a need to expand and broaden the spectrum of human rights in society today, not just in the public sphere, but also in the private sphere. To consider the violation of rights at home, violation of dignity at home as a human rights violation. There is a need for a new legislation today that guides a worker's rights while working from home. You know, there's a television ad, I believe, I forgot what is the brand. Some of you could remind me of a man working in a cupboard while he is at home, and they order something, and his wife opens the cupboard and they see that there's her husband working inside the cupboard. And I think the scenario is very similar today, especially in metro cities. So the challenges now in the post-COVID era are much more for human resource professionals, for social workers, for those engaged in consciousness rising. Fourthly, and I would like to highlight that the feminist perspective of human resource management needs to be strengthened today. We are seeing, especially in India, a very miserable trend. We are seeing the amount of violence that is happening against women. Imagine half the sky, half the world filled with women, and still they are the worst victims of violence. How, as social workers, how would, as you as social workers, make feminism an everyday agenda. Now, see, I tell you that there are men who say that I don't violate dignity of a woman. I don't beat a woman. I don't harass a woman. And they say it in such a way that they are doing a great service to the world. It helps their ego. I don't do this. Even they need to tone down. No, that is how you should be. That's because you are normal. It's not that you are doing a great service. That's how the world should be. So, you see that things have gone from bad to worse, that anyone who's not engaging in regressive behavior takes pride in that, which means good behavior itself is becoming an exception. And this is because we have distanced ourselves from human rights, from the agenda of human rights, so much that we consider not that it is something exterior and external to us. In the household, when they talk of human rights, they just see it as something that appears on television. It is something that appears on Instagram. It is something that appears on the internet. Hardly does anyone make an effort to see to it that this is an everyday agenda. So just as human rights are an everyday agenda, feminism also should become a part of an everyday agenda. Feminism should become a part of human resource management policy. If you need a more gender neutral workplaces, if you need workplaces that are more egalitarian, that do not have a gender bias, you need HR professionals trained in feminist philosophy. Until and unless we go to the root of the problem, we cannot resolve the problem. A lot of cases, even with Vishakha Committee on Sexual Harassment being there in place, a lot of cases go unreported. Every unreported case is an act of injustice. And when injustice accumulates, it has wider and very negative consequences for the society and the state at large. We are sitting at such a threshold today. And today, as capitalism pervades across societies, capitalism has the power to influence, the power to draw people to it. We cannot change, we cannot transition from capitalism to any other system, but we could always refine this form of capitalism. We could always make this form of capitalism much better. We could always make this capitalism more pro-employee, pro-women, pro-vulnerable groups. And in that sense, I believe that this is the august responsibility of social workers and human resource professionals. Because your job, your task is very similar to, say, the judiciary. The judiciary is considered as an independent institution that is not influenced largely by the government nor by the people, but rather it decides logically and objectively. So the crux of everything, is objectivity and rationality. And unless and until the HR professional stands up for the workers' rights, I don't think we can have a new era of an egalitarian workplace. I believe that some of these ideas are possibly difficult to digest. Some of these ideas are too radical. Some of these ideas could be something that you don't normally discuss as part of your syllabus that is more oriented towards management. But at times, we need to challenge our perception to, help understand and build a greater consciousness. So thank you for patiently listening to me, and I thank the organizers for this invitation. And I believe that this is still a work in progress, and the consciousness will take time, but don't lose hope. Every opportunity is an opportunity to do something better. And I hope these ideas for change, these ideas for betterment would help you in whatever that you are doing as entrepreneurs, as professionals, and as employees, and also as better family members, right? So thank you very much. Namaste.